to welcome Lloyd to the podium today. It's been 10 years since we have heard what is going on Columbia Pike documentary project, and there has been so many interesting developments, not just in Arlington, but along the Pike. The Pike has a special place in the hearts of most historians who know that this is one of the oldest roads in the country. Not only that, think about it today as being such a melting pot, such a stew, if you will, of a variety of different ethnicities. And I think that is one of the extra things that makes it special. So he is going to be telling you and showing you a lot about the Columbia Pike and the documentary project. But let me tell you a little bit about him. He is a professional photographer. You'll be able to see that immediately. He has taught at the Northern Virginia Community College, George Mason University, Arlington Public Schools, and the Alternative Learning Center at American University. It's no surprise, he is a member of the Society for Photographic Education. Not really a surprise there at all. And he has been the photographer he's been House and Senate Press Photographers Gallery. He has his things there. He's earned a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from Trinity College in 1974. Thank you for dating yourself. And a Master of Arts in Photography from Goddard College in 1977. So I could go on. There's so many more things to say, but I really want you to see the presentation that he has for you. Okay. Any questions? Please welcome Lloyd Wolf.
Thank you, Annette. Can you all hear me? Okay, I tend to mutter, so it'd be helpful if you can tell. Thank you, Annette, and thank you to all the members of the Historical Society for allowing us to have this forum. I also want to let everyone know that another Columbia Pike documentary project is not me. It's a team of artists, one of whom, Dewey Tron, who you're going to see his video that he put together, is in the back. There's Dewey in the back. He's been with us since the beginning. And the other photographers are Laura Ajami, Mimi Ho, Elena, oh gosh, Elena Dorman. It's a long list, you'll see. The project has its roots actually in 1979 and 80 when Paula Endo and I, we founded the program together, got an NEA grant to document all of Arlington, which for a photo survey grant. And a little bit of that work was actually shown this summer at From One Hand to Another gallery in Green Valley. Paul and I taught together in the county. We both ended up out of teaching after a while. Paula then began a class after-school program at the old Arlington Mill for largely immigrant teens, and I volunteered in that program. They did a book called Portraits of the Pike. Dewey was one of those students way back in the day. One of our other photographers, Mimi Ho, also came out of that group. And at some point, we made the decision that the Pike needed to be documented. Something unusual was going on. And so Paul and her husband Todd and I sat down and kind of dreamed up this thing, you know, why is this huge number of people all in one place and that they're largely getting along? The first person we drafted was Dewey, and then Mimi, and then Alexander La Cueva came on, and Moises Gomez, et cetera. We are sponsored by, now it's called the Columbia Pike Partnership. Our funding has largely come from Virginia Humanities, a couple of Arlington Arts grants. The work is all housed at the Library of Virginia. It's all keyworded metadata. All these pictures have a lot of information embedded in them. And we kept at it. Things keep changing. The initial reason for doing all this was that, I don't know the number right now, but at one point, Wakefield High School got up to 109 languages in one school. And I like to, our delegate, Alfonso Lopez, said at every opening session of the Virginia House that they each stand up and give like a little talk about, their district. And he stood up and said, well, in the high school in my zip code is got 109 languages. And some delegate from way downstate said, that can't be. That just can't be. And he said, it is. It's fact. And just a sideline for this is I was also doing a lot of work in Jerusalem during some of this period. And there's, let's say, a city that's divided and the two major ethnic groups don't get along. That's an understatement. Here, for some reason, groups that are in conflict in their home countries are getting along. And why is that? You'll hear a little bit of it as a Palestinian woman who'll speak about that. Asil Alborno, she has an amazing line. She says, you don't have to be homogenous to be harmonious. And I'm going to just leave that there, say these pictures were all taken in about 2.5 miles, 3 miles, about a half a mile, the Columbia Pike corridor, roughly from the Air Force Memorial to the Arlington line. And I'm going to show you a video which is of all of our pictures. We're all in it. Dewey did the editing and putting it together, including the sound, which was taken off my rather primitive recordings. And I think it'll give you the best introduction, and then we'll go on from there. It's about 11 minutes or so.
Go. Thank you. Always work before.
People who move to South Arlington into the Columbia Pike neighborhood, they know what they're getting. And I've heard from people who've moved around here who have kids. They move here because they want their kids to have the experience of all the ethnicities in their schools. The bit about you can be in an apartment building and you can have an Ethiopian family next to a family from Honduras, next to people from Thailand, et cetera, and that's unique and cool.
There's always been a very strong immigrant influence here. Every one of my neighbors, they were Ethiopian, they were Nigerian, they were Salvadorian, they were Mexican. All of them were immigrants. I didn't know certain parts of Arlington existed until I got older. From 2016 until now, in 2 years, everything has changed so quickly. Food store, and that Oriental market that used to be here. But then you couldn't go there anymore because they closed it down.
I believe creating retail centers that are a little bigger than the rest of the Pike. They may include in those retail centers maybe one regional or national brand that sends a message not only to those living on the Pike but to future small business owners that this is a place that you can come and really do business. And I believe that you can create those anchors without sacrificing the overall community of the startup. I think thriving means to find transportation, destination, so that you can truly have a diverse community. Diverse always means something different to someone else. But if we can have homegrown businesses, culturally diverse street with immigrants and people starting their careers, a place for those who are more established. Unfortunately, those groups don't always connect with each other, or they are fearful of each other that one or the other will drive the other out. But finding a way to make that happen, I think, is a modern community and one that can thrive in the long run.
The kids have a better life here, more opportunities for the kids at school, out of school, in sports, and I think Arlington is amazing. It's an amazing county, and that gives me my dreams that can be true for my family and for my community.
Sometimes I forget I'm in America. Like, it's so diverse. I'm like, oh, it feels normal. It feels like I'm home. I don't see a type of people alone. I see different type of people. Like, I see Asians, I see Hispanics, I see Blacks, Africans.
In Arlington, that diversity that we have, that we share different cultures, and then it teaching us to be a better human beings, because we're learning from everybody. I learned from the people that came from Guatemala, from El Salvador, different cultures. It's, everybody contribute a little bit to make this country a better place to live. Without the immigrants, this country is not going to be the country that is.
And so this was sort of ground zero for Vietnamese, or for Southeast Asians in general, in the entire United States. And then we started getting a little bit of everything, United Nations. But gradually we got more and more Ethiopians, Eritreans, and Hispanics.
My dream for this place is a little bit what I think most of us progressives dream for cities in general, right? That it will continue to be a place that welcomes in people from all walks of life and all over the world, and provides the kind of community through good jobs, great schools, good transportation, housing that is manageable in price, for them to achieve whatever the good life looks like for them.
When you move to a country, you're not familiar, and you're having to learn a new language and custom, and you don't fit in. So I know what it feels like, to be an immigrant, try to find your identity and try to figure things out.
It was shocking, and I like it. I like diversity. I had to adapt. It was a change, like also the way of thinking. Like I wonder how they see me. Do they see me the same way I see them, and then what they think of me? Do they think of me the same way I think of them? So all those were questions to me, into my mind, as I go about in my daily routine.
Yeah, I've made friends from the whole world, from Vietnam, from Mongolia, from China, from Ethiopia, my country, from Eritrea. And I love talking to them, because I hear different stories about some stuff from different countries' perspectives, so that's great. When I came here, I expected to just to stay home and go to school, that's it. I didn't expect to communicate with my community, and I was kind of scared, I guess, because I was new. But when I came here, everybody was smiling at me, everybody was accepting, so I kind of feel like home, and I didn't feel like I'm alone, so that is a great thing. We as a community can be whatever we want. We can get anywhere we want if we stay together and stick together. So the love we have can improve our life for better. So
I love Columbia Pike. What I think I like the most is just how real it is. Even the guy next door, the Mongolian guy that opened up a computer repair store. That's awesome. I mean, that's what this country's about.
I'm a first-generation American. I'm born and raised here. I'm considered American with strong Ecuadorian and Punjabi Sikh roots. My father considers himself a first-generation Thai with strong Punjabi Sikh roots, and now an American. Being biracial in Arlington, there are more than 100 languages spoken here, and there is a diversity of experiences that I grew up in that are really unique to being in a mixed race family. I think because both of my families have immigration and refugee experiences, I think it makes us very resilient. Growing up, there's so much of just work hard, try hard, luchar.
I think that Americans have this perception that America looks a certain way and it's supposed to sound a certain way, and we are living in a really big experiment. Can you bring people who come from different backgrounds, they're different religions, they're different races, they have different ideological beliefs, and bring them from all over the world, mix them up into this one place and say, can you govern yourselves where you can coexist peacefully and thrive? To come to a place like Arlington that is so diverse, and you see people from all walks of life coexisting peacefully and thriving professionally, in their education, in their personal lives, it does make me feel really hopeful when we can prove to the world that, hey, you don't have to be homogenous to be harmonious. You can be diverse and still coexist very peacefully, and not just peacefully, but actually appreciate the place that you live in.
I'd have to say one of my big concerns right now is, and it's on a lot of people's minds, is the development, or some would say gentrification, and many others would say maybe overdevelopment of the Pike, and how we've kicked out Black and Brown owned businesses, a lot of the Latino owned businesses, and a lot of the Asian American and Indian owned businesses on the Pike, and how rental rates and keep rising and rising and rising as we continue to densify, and a much wider, younger crowd with disposable income are able to move in here and take up the apartment complexes.
It seems like there won't be as many immigrants in the Columbia Pike area. I think that eventually, I'd like to hope that the children, the people who are my age or the younger, will benefit from the schooling and just living in this area to want to kind of stay in this area and grow with it.
I also want to make note that I didn't before to someone who's been a sort of community liaison person for us, and one of the other interviewers is Sushmita Mazumdar, who's been very instrumental in our work. She now runs Studio Pause on the Pike, which is a community art space, also runs a similar space in Buckingham. Sush doesn't have any of the verbal interviews, the sound interviews, but they're in the books, and she's been an important person in our group. I'm just going to run pictures. There are tens of thousands of them. I've been doing this heavily, solidly since 2007. I shot, a week or two ago again. In fact, I think on the blog I have the Historical Society's talk with Craig Syfax. I just put it up online. It's ongoing. We're not under grant right now. All of us are doing a little bit of extra, but we're all kind of keeping at it and keeping in touch. The Pike changes a lot. It's interesting, like that picture is gone. The buildings are different. The people are somewhat different. It'll be interesting to see the next census demographics what's going on. There have been real changes. Though also just for what we know is that some very large percentage, and I'm not going to give an exact number because I'll misquote it, but a lot of the county, English is not their first language or the language spoken at home. And the densest part of that is along Columbia Pike. And to me, one of the most interesting things is with a little bit of blustering, by and large, people are intermingled. I think Queens, New York is now more ethnically diverse than Columbia Pike, not by a lot. But one of the things about the Pike that's different is in Queens, there'll be like a Bukharan Jewish neighborhood, a Puerto Rican neighborhood, a Dominican neighborhood, a Russian neighborhood, and they're separate. Here, by and large, people are all mixed together. And I think that's really quite interesting. I also think it's interesting that when I was, Paul and I were looking for people to be on the team, we didn't have to look for diversity. That's just the talent that's in the community. Dewey's family's is originally from Vietnam, Mimi's from Laos, Laura's from Syria, Susha's from Mumbai in India, Alexandra's Russian, Moises was from Colombia. I'm not going, I need one of each. It's just that's who's here. And they happen to be very talented. Some of the people came to us as interns originally through Aya Takashima, who's the photo teacher at Northern Virginia Community College, and others, a lot of the interns, hardcore, the younger interns came through Takis Karantonis when he was head of CPRO. Now he's been a real supporter of what we do. We've been cooperating with many different groups along the Pike, particularly the Bangladeshi community with Creole Bangla. Ethiopian Community Development Councils opened their doors to us. Arlington, now it's called True Ground, but Arlington Partnership for Affordable Housing, AHC. You just have to network. To go into small businesses, largely, you don't just show up, we have big cameras and you show up with that stuff. You don't just walk into somebody's home or somebody's business. You need an introduction, and that, helped. There were a variety of ways in which we did our networking. Personal, one of the Mongolian women that Sushmita interviewed, she met because her taxi driver from the airport was Mongolian. He said, "Oh, there's this gal at my church you should meet." So she went to the church. There's a lot of that. Our app on now, True Ground. I would go to the resident advisors at their affordable housing complexes. There were 3 or 4 or 5 along the Pike. Now they're all over the community, not just in Arlington. And just say, I'm having trouble meeting a Somali. It's not just walking on the street. And, okay, how many do you need? And that kind of work, Janet Valenzuela, a Latina activist, has introduced us around and invited us to events. And it just sort of, at some point, people come to us to do pictures. A few of the pictures, like that last one, were done for Arlington County Public Arts. You're just seeing a range. I think I said this to someone I was talking early on. When we had our show at the Museum of Contemporary Art last year, someone who didn't know anything about us saw us the show being installed and said to me, "Oh, it looks like you all have been all over the world. This is like a travelogue thing." I said, "No, it's all taken in this very dense, narrow." And most of the pictures are taken with Nikon's, Canons, Sony big cameras, but there's cell phone cameras and smaller cameras. You use what you got. And the idea was to show a mixture of the built environment, but the most important part to me of history is the people. It's easy to relate to the buildings because everybody sees them. The people are what make up a community. I'm also convinced over time, having done other documentary work, that history is what somehow doesn't manage to get thrown away in the trash. And we've been quite conscious about placing this into archives where it can get used. I'm currently working with a student at Virginia Tech about who's doing public landscape spaces, and she's been using her pictures in that. And there are other outcomes for it. The work will also eventually be with the libraries that have been cooperative with us and very supportive in Arlington. One nice thing, since this is a born digital project, to give it to people, you just hand them a hard drive and they download it. There's some tricks with that there are a number of archival prints, a couple hundred that the Library of Virginia has. Dewey, do you want to come up? If there's any, I think the best thing to do is, if you all have any questions, we're the ones who can help you with that. All right. Just how did you get involved?
Well, I got involved. I was a kid at the time, and there was a community center across the street, and they had a program where they were just giving kids cameras and film, and just told us to go out and shoot. And I wasn't like, socially aware or anything. I just thought it was cool to get a free camera and shoot. And so it was more apparent to me later in life that it was a clever way to get an inside look into, our lives as immigrants. We were just experimenting and having fun shooting. It was a way for me to go on an adventure, escape, find something to look at, make a cool picture. But eventually it became this project, and I was interested when they asked me. It was just a natural progression from where I was developing. And I grew up in the Pike. I've been here my whole life, so it's nice to be able to contribute the work that I just casually created, just going on adventures and meeting different people to be part of this project.
Okay, thanks. It's also interesting, like I was saying, and it was the thing is that that we're talking about Jerusalem. One of the members of our team, Laura Ajami, is from Syria. She and I have family in Israel, not like second cousins. And if we were in the Mideast, we literally cannot talk to each other. That's an understatement. Here, we're friends, colleagues, can talk about the issues and focus on our community here and do something good. The woman who talks about the harmony and homogeneity, her family's from Gaza. Right? Originally, she grew up in Kuwait because the Gazans were kicked out of there, and then they were kicked out of Kuwait. She grew up here largely, a SEAL. The fact that, we see ourselves as a member of a community that's accepting, I think is really important. That we've done something right here. I'm concerned, obviously, after the recent election, what may happen. Our team, though I think I'm the only one who does it, is part of a DEI initiative within the county. And I remember talking when our governor came in and was down on that stuff. The woman, I said, how are we going to handle this? And this is an African-American Black woman, just said, we know how to fight. And I'm concerned about the safety of some of these folks, and that luckily Arlington, I think, will do the right thing, but we may end up doing more documenting than we had in before, or we'll see the changes on the street. I don't know. And it's kind of fun to do this, to be honest, particularly Laura and at times Dewey and I, and earlier Alexander. We just go out like tag team, go out together and shoot. Dewey and I tend to shoot more separately. but go out as a team and like walk around the Pike and either at an event or just walk up and down the street and try to make pictures and see what happens. And doing a little bit less of that now, though. Every few months I'll go out. Laura is now working for Al Hurra full time. They're not under VOA, but they're like that. It's Arab language, American Arab language channel, and that's keeping her busy. It's interesting to see these people and think about what it says. The blues, we cover the festivals we've covered primarily have been the Blues Festival every year, the county fair. There used to be big Bolivian dance festivals on the Pike. They're mostly happening in Prince William and further out in Fairfax. We're noticing, like, this is anecdotal, that a lot of the community in Arlington, as they make a little more money or there's housing pressure, moving out to Woodbridge and to Gaithersburg. Woodbridge, and Manassas, the head of the sort of the main person of the Mongolian community is now in Manassas. There's still a lot of Mongolians in Arlington. They're still coming. We're still getting Ukrainians, though they seem to be coming in little bits at a time. I do work with and we all do, but mostly me, with Ethiopian Community Development Council, who works specifically with asylum seekers and refugees. They now have been hiring Ukrainian social workers and caseworkers, which is sort of interesting that there was an organization was set up to work with African immigrants, is now working with Arab and Eastern European immigrants. Some Central American and Congolese. Also, this picture that you just saw of the Peruvian and Bolivian group, some of their pictures are taken at the Bangladeshi festival, which is multicultural. They'll have Chinese dancers and Appalachian cloggers and various other ethnic groups performing before the Bangladeshi pop star comes on. They haven't had it in the last 2 years. I'll spare you my feelings about how the county's dealing with that. Hopefully it'll happen again. And the other thing that we've tried to do, I guess hopefully this is obvious, is we really want to make the pictures good pieces of art. That they need to stand alone just as visual images, not just here's a nice collection, everybody's a good person, but the picture, I'm going to be blunt, the pictures could suck. And that's not any good. I mean, it's a talented group of people working on this. This PowerPoint goes on a long time. I just redid it last week. So some of the pictures are within the last week, or maybe 2 weeks. Ma'am? This particular one, the one in 7980 was all of Arlington. The National Endowment for Arts was at the time giving photo survey grants. Diversity wasn't as big a piece of it. This piece was specifically about it. A researcher at Audrey Singer, and I forget the other academic's name, at Carnegie, came up with the phrase world in a zip code. They did a study of Columbia Pike. For a while, it was the most ethnically diverse zip code in the country. It isn't now, but it's still very diverse. And we were curious, it's like, why is that? Why has this happened? I'm not entirely sure, but we thought it was worth examining and at least witnessing. Make sure that there was the material for study was available. Plus, it's about community building too. The idea of Takis once said that in a way that Paula and Dewey and I and all of us sort of created the idea that Pike didn't have a sense of itself as a single community. it was Penrose and Barcroft, and the idea of it being a continuous thing may have partially come out of this, which is really Paula's idea in many ways. And then,
What kind of structures does the government, the local government provide that might enable this homogeneous ethnicity?
it's a good question. I mean, their county, some of it's proactive, some of it's reactive. You know, I mean, one of the people we interviewed, and he's in a bunch of the pictures, is the Latino community development police officer. They saw that it was a necessary thing to do, right? It was useful, and he's been very helpful to that. There, some of it's funding for some of the nonprofits along the Pike and others. Just general services, translation stuff, you know, things in the school. I'm not a policy person, and probably better answered by someone on the board. But the county has certainly done a lot. The interesting thing, and I think one of the reasons it works, these people who come here found it a welcoming, safe place to be. There are several people we talked to, particularly Muslim women, who, if they're observant or visible, they're comfortable around, you know, sort of inside the Beltway. They get further out in Virginia, they don't always have such good experiences, or in some cases are just scared, you know, word of mouth. One of the Mongolian girls talked about just, you know, people didn't know how to react to her when she was on a soccer team and she was out further into the state, and they just didn't know what to make of her, you know. And she's now a fashion marketing person in New York. You know, she in Brooklyn is also, you know, her ethnicity is important to her, but it's not going to be so involved in the job, in the career parts. And I think in Arlington, and I think the Arlington's values like that go back a long way. You know, I've recently rewatched a wonderful video that you can find on YouTube called "It's Just Me." If any of you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's about I think the school system put it together about in the 50s and the 40s, the effort within Arlington to desegregate the school system. At what's known Dorothy Ham School, the old Stratford, later Woodlawn, H.B. Woodlawn building. But it showed, you know, that wouldn't have happened without a community backing. Not that it was perfect, but there was generally a feeling of we should treat people properly. He's telling me that guy, that his name is not what it is. He says boy, and he says apparently it's not his name. Boy, yeah. Yeah. There was a period where we were consciously documenting the music. We have one of the few practitioners of Piedmont blues, which is an old Virginia forms living. Rick Franklin lives along the Pike. He didn't want to be interviewed, but we photographed him a couple times. It's a form of blues. Most of us know the blues, Chicago blues, Delta blues. Piedmont blues is from that, you know, Piedmont of Virginia, North Carolina, somewhat into Appalachia. Rick is is an African-American guy. He's I think he's a computer person for his day job, but he plays, you know, resonator guitar, and he's good at it. And then we photographed, you know, bluegrass and some army band members and various different types of music. I have yet to do it. I've been promising myself one of the Vietnamese, one of the Ethiopian restaurants on the Pike has music pretty often, but it's late and I keep forgetting to go. I want to photograph that. There's a Malian musician who comes and plays for ECDC all the time, who's Sheikh Amala, who's scary good. Mariachi, got a couple mariachi bands, all within Arlington. Though I like to think it's otherwise, but it's weird for me to be in this part of Arlington at this stage in my life. You know, Arlington is pretty divided. It's not perfectly north-south because it isn't, but there is. I just saw a thing on Facebook with one of these Arlington things about someone's like, where are the safe places to live in Arlington? And there were a number of people said, don't go south of 50. And I'm like, I live in Glencarnland, it's like not really that. And actually, the most dangerous parts of the county, I believe, is Claremont, because of the, partying on the weekend. So but it is a perception. There is crime on, this county, and this does happen, but it's a pretty low crime area. No, right, right. I mean, I don't worry about my camera getting ripped off or my car disappearing.
I mean, I've had some isolated incidents, but I don't know if it has anything to do with the whole of Arlington.
Right.
Yeah.
But it is real, and it's important. I think, I don't think it's in the movie, but it's in the book. That Sarah Manrique Chiriboga said, until she got to be a later teenager, she didn't really know anything except the Pike. She went to, Barcroft, and she went to Kenmore, and then she went to Wakefield, and she didn't end up she didn't really know Boston, and she didn't know Westover, and she didn't know, because there seems a partial dividing line. I mean, there's Buckingham and the affordable places in the county. Affordability is an issue for all of us, right? I mean, that's not just unique to South Arlington. And I think it's changing part of the Pike. This is, again, anecdotal. The young people who are in the metro corridor are eventually meeting up and getting married and having families, and they can't afford a house in that corridor. So what's a little less pricey is the Pike corridor. And so there's slow changeover in demographics. Though something that Chris, the board member, told me years ago, said years ago, was that a lot of these things happen organically. That, at one time, Clarendon was heavily Vietnamese, right? And a decision was made within that community's business dynamics and otherwise to move to Falls Church, right? And that didn't happen because the county and Falls Church made that a zoning change. Some of these things happen by their own dynamics. I don't know why Mongolians left River Place and Roslyn to move to the Pike, but there are areas that are heavily Mongolian still like that. Or why the Somalis picked up and moved to Minnesota. There was a huge Somali population at one time here. And a few left, but not like there was. But I think it's the feeling of good schools, close in, good transportation, what everybody wants, right? Access to work, and also the ethic of acceptance and tolerance in most of the county. There are incidents, but their feeling is people feel safer. I don't think we'll run through this whole thing yet. So the soccer player. The woman on the left there was the head of the Dream Project. She just put out a statement after the election. She's a former DACA person, Dream Act. They're worried. Karen Velasquez. If you want to see the county at its most diverse, the county fair hires me every summer to photograph the fair. You want to see the county in full flower diversity, go to the fair at night. And besides it, you'll see a lot of tween girls wearing very little clothing. You see everybody is there having a good time. And people, again, not a whole lot of problems. To me, there's a line that I've felt several times while working on the Pike that I'll get teary, almost like happy teary. And I go, this is what peace looks like. And I've been in places where it's not, including locally. And that, the streetcar. That was a mess. I guess that was the board finally decided through internal pressure. I haven't seen a lot of inter-ethnic problems. I mean, I assume there are some. I heard that, though this happened at WNL, that apparently some Latino gang kids or gang-like kids started picking on some Mongolian kids, and Mongolian kids tussled with them. That was the end of that. That wasn't Wakefield. But you don't hear a lot of that kind of stuff, and I'm not hearing it from the nonprofits. There was some trouble. I guess there was a lot of issues with the opioid, fentanyl stuff, and there were some kids who OD'd, and there are several different groups, and then other groups piled on to support the kids and their families and their counselors. But it was strange. I mean, there's a couple of pictures in here of I saw there were Eritrean and Ethiopian girls, and they were in shock because the person who had passed was a Latino boy. So I guess it was their friend or someone they knew from class. There's some resentments in older parts of people who've lived here longer, both white and black, about people that are coming in. But I think the issues are more about affordability than who the people are. It doesn't usually get translated to us, what we see. One of the things that I think, if we go back and do this full bore again further, is one thing, even though there's almost all the pictures are in public, some exceptions, like in the schools and a few in businesses. There was a book came out in the 70s that changed my way of thinking about documenting, called Suburbia, by a photographer named Bill Owens, that didn't even look like art to me when it came out. It was so contemporary. It just looked like this is American life. I look at that book now and it's really dated. But one of the things, he was a small town photographer in California, and one of the things Bill did well was go into people's homes. He had total access. And he would be photographing, he'd open up their kitchen cabinet and photograph the food there. And I think there's a lot of that kind of stuff we could do more of. Let's see an easy endpoint for this. And we've been doing it nonstop since 2006 or 7 with pieces before. In fact, I know from when I did this recently, there are a couple of pictures there from 2001. I think what spurred us is there was a multicultural festival at Tyrrell Hill Park. I was still shooting film that Paula had me photograph. And you were drumming in that.
Oh, that.
Yeah, that was sort of the beginning of it. And I went, oh my God, I can't believe what's going on in my community. I hadn't really had my eyes opened to what's happening. It's easy to miss, but I said, on a hot summer day, walk along the central part of the park and just sit there if there's an outside seating, just watch who goes by. It's pretty interesting. That's gone. That's Adams Mill. It's now Penrose Square. That's all gone. The Pike is still physically changing. There's a section that's been abandoned, now a whole block, Amazon was going to put in a store there and they didn't. So it's just sitting empty. That's making the business and the neighborhood communities pretty upset. It hasn't changed yet. There's a couple of other things pending. Career Center is being completely rebuilt. That'll change the profile. Things change quickly here. Though it's interesting also, I collect pictures of the Pike that I've been able to find online historically. And it's interesting to see chunks of it. At one point, there's all trees. Or one of my favorites is now, it used to be a gas station. It's now the broiler, has been for years. But if you find an old picture of it, it was a service station. And that's that. I think we can stop it. I don't see who we are. This is us.
Favorite type of picture or your favorite photo?
I don't have, that's like asking, what's your favorite kid? But there's a couple pictures that have enduring resonance for me. That one of them was taken at a Bolivian dance festival. I was up very close, and you can't see the man's face. There's just stuff hanging in front of him, and it's sort of like you're forced into the void to try to figure out. It's like a shaman kind of feel. The favorite situations of the festivals, they're just fun. It's like the military uses that phrase, target-rich environment. You can't screw up, The Bangladeshi festival in particular, it's like Dewey shoots with a heavy saturation on the way he sets his camera. And it's like when I do the tech work and it's like, oh my God, it's like so bright. And even mine is dialed back a little bit. I just enjoy that. I really enjoy doing portraiture, and the interviews are kind of fun because you get, if you walk up to someone and say, hey, tell me all about your life, they'll go like, get out of here. You're creepy. If you, and they'll be right. But if you say, well, we're working on a project about the community and explain a little bit about what you're doing, can we interview you? Would you be interested in this? A lot of people say yes, and then they'll spill. And I enjoy that piece of it. I know Paula did. She did some interviews early on. Sush does them too. Has a very different style than me. She gets into working with the people. What picture do you have? One of my favorites is one of Dewey's. Is the guys in the snow. That with a big dump we had a few years back. Do you want to talk about that one? I don't know if you.
Well, it snowed really hard. It was like maybe I don't know, 2-3 feet of snow, and I just, everything was locked up. Nobody could get out of their driveways, and I just thought we should just walk out. It just looked kind of cool, like very post-apocalyptic, because everyone was walking in the middle of the street, and so my brother was just, being goofy. We're like pretending we're in a video game, like Metal Gear Solid. I don't think anyone knows what that is, but we just, we're creeping around, and I just saw some interesting moments. But well, my favorite people to photograph is I lived in this apartment where there were a lot of different ethnicities there, and I just get to know all the residents, and I would figure out who were the most interesting. Like one of them in particular was this guy with a tattoo, like showing me his tattoo, and you're like, how do you start talking to that guy, because he's so like scary. But I ran into him a lot, and he would just get used to me and friendly, and he invited me over to his house one day and just started telling me a story. I mean, when they have that many tattoos, that's like their life story, like pasted on their body. And so he was just telling me how this was like his only entertainment, or like his legacy of whatever he went through. But he told me he was like in jail for like most of his life. And there's some more things I'll leave out about his tattoos because there are more explicit ones for I would go out and shoot. There was this one time I was just shooting casually and a bus rolled by and my camera actually ran out of battery. I didn't have any more power to shoot with, but the bus like immediately pulled over and it was the bus driver coming out yelling at me. I'm like, whoa, what's going on? He's like, you delete this picture right now. I'm like, I don't have the picture. He's like, no, show me the picture and delete it. And I just like couldn't show it to him because my battery is dead already. And I never actually took the photo. And actually I did take a photo, but it was just like a blur, just a big blur of a bus rolling by. And he was just being so aggressive toward me. He's like saying, this is America, you can't do this. I'm like, well, actually this is America and I can do this. But and he didn't really speak English that well. And it was just kind of a scary moment for me. But I ran away from him, like a black fellow.
We haven't had, I personally haven't had a whole lot of people to say, what do you do? You can explain to them. Okay. It's easier at the festivals, kind of on display, but even just walking down the street. Also, the legalities of it. This is not a commercial project. If you're in public, on a public space, and the pictures are being used for news, documentary, you're free, it's free game to make your picture. That said, all the interviews have releases because they're at home, they're more intimate. You want to make sure people are happy. We send them the rough cut of the interview, make sure they're good with it. A couple of them tried to completely rewrite it. And let me do it first. Because they're not editors, but it was just, we want them to be able to tell their story and their ideas. Interviewing is a complicated thing to do. There's a little bit of, when you see in the post, say shortened, for brevity and clarity. There's a lot of that. We don't put words in people's mouth, but we may cut and paste like a paragraph, move it around. And the pictures, by and large, are pretty straightforward. There is post-processing done on pretty much all of these. There are thousands of pictures this is the part that's interesting to me. There's many, many thousands of pictures that aren't really quite as interesting aesthetically that are in the collection that may have used down the line. I'm finding that with the work from 1979-80 of the previous project, that at one point I photographed every single building on the Pike. Frankly, the Pike, this is true of all of Arlington. We're a city of remarkably undistinguished architecture. It's not, and the Pike is, Carantonis once said, he thought one of the reasons people felt comfortable on the Pike is it's not Old Town, where you feel like you're coming into an established place. It's sort of generic looking. It could be any strip development in the area. Most of the Pike, most of the built Pike until the last 10 years was built in the Roosevelt-Truman era. From once Pentagon put in New Deal, all those garden apartments went in. And this is true of lots of other parts of Arlington too. And it didn't change for a long time. Now it's changing pretty fast. And I don't know, I don't have a crystal ball, but I think it's worth doing. Dave Behringer has been a champion of ours. He used to be at Virginia Humanities. And I just talked to Phil Brookman at the National Gallery. I think we're the longest running community documentary ever. I'm not sure of that, but I don't know of any others that have been going at it for a whole community this long.
I'm thinking about which were reading photos in chronological order.
Right.
Is there a place somewhere or person that you have followed from the beginning and then taking a picture every year or almost every year, so we can see the arc of change?
There are events.
Besides our
Your websites, the blog.
Yeah, the blog is, I can't not make it that way. The blog is chronological. And it goes back to 2006 or 7, some number like that. So if you want to look at 1,000 posts, you can do that. You can also, there's a search engine in the upper corner, and if you want to type in Mongolian, it'll bring all of those. There's a couple, one of my favorite things that I've done like that every year is the Ethiopian Christmas party that ECDC does. And there's some of the kids in the early pictures are now in college or out of college. And you have to know what you're looking at, but they're there. There's some buildings that I've photographed quite a few times. Arlington, we did a lot of pictures of construction of the buildings, and actually demolition, construction, new building, and then things happening and people around it. That could be pulled together. I did some of that for this student, Andrea, I can't pronounce your last name, Gaot. What? Gaoat. At Tech, that she wanted pictures of the built environment, but with people interacting. And I looked at her, so there's certain areas that I photographed a lot. When Sushmita opened her gallery on the Pike, she wanted pictures from the Buckingham area. So there's a lot of pictures actually of that one little strip mall that I had to consciously pull them together. It's not, that would be, it took me to do that, but yeah, I mean, I photographed, I assume, African man in front of it. It used to be a check cashing store. I photographed a Latino woman in front of it when it was a check cashing store, and et cetera, et cetera. I photographed the check cashing store, photographed the buildings in the Goodwill, photographed the Cassiel, the hair salon next door repeatedly.
But that's what I'm watching. I don't know what year it is.
This was just thrown together. It's just thrown together. It's fireworks. Yeah, the only way to really do that would be to go on. I think it starts pretty much with Adams Mill. I remember Paula Endo said, go photograph Adams Mill. And I said, why? It's like, it's not very interesting. She said, well, it's coming down. Right? And it's gone. Cowboy Cafe, all that stuff. The little wedding supply store, it's gone. But, when it's there. So some of it, it will be valuable over time. Ma'am? All of them. Well, no, there's a handful that were shot, filmed, but then were scanned. I put metadata in, heavy metadata. It doesn't have it. Our cameras don't have geolocators.
I turn it off. I get tired.
Yeah, he doesn't do it. My camera doesn't do it. But it'll say 2700 block Columbia Pike and the date. If it's like if I'm photographing a graduation party at one of the residences, it'll have the address of the residence in there. I'm pretty thorough, but I had a German engineer father. And he was very, very, very organized. He once wrote a bibliography of bibliographies of map books, of map atlases. I think his only non-engineering publication. He was a scholar of maps and mapping. And I picked up some, it's not my nature to be that way, but it's helpful. I remember at one point Dewey asked me, when you'd photographed that hair salon and you wanted the name of the people, we couldn't remember. I went back, found the picture, went into the metadata, and there it was, because you told me at the time.
Oh.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's there. It's better than my memory. And the folks down at Library of Virginia, they know how to extract that material. Which one? Oh, it's just me. Yeah, and you type "it's just me" Arlington on YouTube. It's pretty long, but it's really worth it. I mean, it's long. I found that "it's just me" is just really a beautiful thing. I mean, you get angry, you get choked up. It's also interesting to see some of the people being interviewed. They were interviewed late in life, but when they were doing this, they were younger. Some of them I kind of knew when I was a young guy. It was, 20s, they were the age I am now. It's also, I've spent my whole adult life in Arlington. I grew up in inner Fairfax, went to the former Jeb Stewart, but I've been in Arlington since 75. And I moved here because it was cheap. We lived on Military Road in a group house. And there's no way that house is worth less than $2 million now. Just right near the library. It's and to do, I'm actually meeting with a couple of people today on my partner Ruth and I were in Europe this summer, and we went to Antwerp, and they have an amazing city museum. We can't compete. It's in a 12th century castle. But they had a section about, they're as diverse as we are, almost. I was shocked. And I had lived in Holland briefly, well, for about a year when I was a kid. There were Dutch people, a few Indonesians. Now Holland is diverse. Antwerp was different groups than we have here, but very diverse. And they had a section in their museum beautifully putting that forth, honoring it, explaining it, interviews with all kinds of people, and you touch a button and it came up in multiple translation in different languages. So we're talking about trying to figure it out, but it would mean doing more than just the Pike. Because there's more than, the counties, though it's a small county, there's a lot going on. Different sections are quite different.
If you were to document any other portion of Arlington, where would it be?
If we were going to document, I was going to document any other section of Arlington as intensely. I wouldn't have the same warm feelings, but probably Boston through Clarendon, just because it's really vibrant. It's sort of a lot of things are going on. The change is very rapid. There's a lot of energy on the street to see the buildings are going up and down really fast. And I think it's indicative of what a lot of people think of when they see Arlington. When the young people are moving to Arlington because it's cool. They're not moving to the Pike. I mean, young, white, educated. I mean, it's not just white, some diversity. But it would be interesting, I think, to why is this happening? How is it happening? Who's here? Plus, I think it would be visually interesting. But I'm coming out with a book on klezmer music soon. I'm working on a project still where I've been photographing street memorials to homicide victims and DMV from being there for 21 years. I got a lot on my plate. So, and Dewey's got full-time work doing video and his own and music.
Well, sort of to answer your question for me, I just recently finished a series. It's called We Are Barcroft, and we were interviewing residents that lived in the Barcroft apartment community. And I think my original proposal was hey, we should talk to people who speak a language that's not English. Maybe there's a story there that we don't know about. It's going to get lost if we don't translate some of these stories. So, we did our best to get in there and interview people, but it was just interesting to hear their journey here, how they made a living here, and like what they're doing, what they like about this place. So that's what we did. And if you search it up, it's for Studio Pause, one of the members of Columbia Pike documentary, she's pioneering that. It's called We Are Barcroft. So if you just look it up on YouTube, you can find the whole series. It's like an 8-episode series. I produced it to that.
Yeah, that's Sushmita Muslim. And if any of you just want, it's open, like Thursday through Saturday.
Yeah.
If any of you are interested in just an interesting experience, interesting person to meet Sush. Go to Studio Pause. She has all kinds of things going on there. And she's a vital person in our team. What?
Thank you.
Fascinating.
Yes.